Let's talk to our buddy Grant McCauley. He covers the Braves for us, guys. You listen to him here on Sports Radio 92.9 The Game. I want to start with our Braves. We'll go around this division as well because we got a Phillies fan here sitting with us, Grant, who's pretty happy about what his team did. Tell us about Brad Hand, and what do you think about now that it's come and gone? Did we address the needs?
Yeah, I think as much as you could without really expecting a big splashy move. The Braves got a piece that could help them out in the bullpen right after getting A.J. Minter back. And, of course, with Max Fried, who threw a bullpen today and should be all systems go for this weekend, the club is going to get better. I just don't know that, it really satisfies everyone when you see a lot of other bigger moves happening across the division and across baseball that the Braves went out and, quote-unquote, won the trade deadline. But I don't know that they really had to, and I think that's kind of part of where they see themselves as a very complete team that does, first and foremost, need to get healthy, maybe more so than they needed to go out and make a handful of big deals. They're not trying to get over the top. This is a team that is very good as they currently stand and could get a little bit better based on guys that should come off the injured list. So I know it's not the answer probably a lot of people are looking for, but you're talking about a team with the best record in baseball that has continued to just win games at a rate that nobody else in the sport has. So you got to imagine something's been working this year and that they've got the people that they need in place to continue this thing on for the next couple of months and into October.
I know, Grant, we talked about coming up short in the postseason with pitching in 20 and in 22 against the Phillies. I know I've been banging this drum, and I understand it. They really, truly believe, and obviously they're closer to it than you and I are, but they believe that Wright, when he comes back, will be effective. And yeah, everybody because to me, that's the one that's the big unknown.
It is, and it's because I think of where we are right now in the system or in the timetable of, wanting to see him pass all of these different tests. I mean, Kyle Wright's been throwing as well, doing bullpen work, and he feels good, and he feels that he has addressed through both rest and treatment the shoulder injury that was bugging him a lot earlier. And with the Braves, I think this is one thing that's kind of, and again, it's not the most exciting thing, but it just kind of is the reality of the situation is they have built up such a lead and played so well that they can afford to allow a guy like this to have the time to get well. Whereas a lot of other people, they wouldn't really be able to wait on this because they're 3, 4, 5 games behind in the wild card or in a division race, and they're trying to make something happen right now. The Braves are just in a different reality at the moment. But I think the big thing is when you get Max Fried back into this rotation and you've got Spencer Strider and Bryce Elder and Charlie Morton, I mean, that's a pretty solid 4. And if you can get right back there in the 1st of September, like that week or so, I think that they'll know what they have. And as we get into the postseason, I mean, yeah, health is one of the most unpredictable things because after the Braves did everything they did to win the division last year, Max Fried got sick and Spencer Strider hurt his oblique. And that happened in the final, week or 10 days of the season. Right. That wasn't something you can plan for. And even with a trade deadline, you can't plan for it because they've only got so many roster spots and so many spots in rotation to utilize these guys down the stretch as well.
And, Grant, just as a follow-up, I remember the old days in the 90s, early 2000s, guys like Millwood and Nagel. Sometimes you had so many pitchers you couldn't even find a guy for the NLDS. They'd be outside. Is it an insurance policy, to your point about those guys? Isn't it worth investing in or not?
I just don't know that they had to, and I think that that's really where they felt. And that should tell you, I think, to kind of go back to your other question, because, again, I mean, like you said, they're a lot closer to this than either of us are, but they feel confident that Max Fried is going to be able to come back and give them the kind of performances that you would expect from out of Max Fried. And the same can be said of Kyle Wright. I mean, if they did not feel, I feel like, that either one or both of those guys were going to be able to come back and be effective, I think that they would have been out there trying to do more in the starting pitchers market. And I will say, because I got a lot of questions about this, could the Braves beat the deal that the Astros gave the Mets for Justin Verlander? Maybe, but I think it's just a moot point because the Mets are not going to trade somebody like that in their division and pay them to beat the New York Mets for the next couple of years. So I feel like that you also kind of have to know how this market developed. And for the Braves, it just wasn't the need to go out there and make a big move like that. Because, again, I do think they're confident in Fried and Wright to come back in and bolster this rotation and get them where they need to get in October at maximum health so that they have a chance to go win series and go deep into the postseason, because I believe this is a club, as currently constructed with those guys back in the helm, that can do just that.
What about in this division? Phillies make a deal. Obviously, they feel like, hey, we can still make the wild card, whether they're catching us or not, but they feel like they have a shot. In the division, we see the Mets trade guys away. What about the Phillies?
Yeah, I think that the Phillies are a club that you have to look at as one that can be dangerous, and it's a crazy, furious deal. So if you have specific ones that you want me to comment on, please ask them to me, because I've been overloading my brain in the last 15 or 20 minutes trying to remember all of them. And the Marlins were crazy enough, were the busiest one at the deadline, making a host of moves, not huge moves, but ones that could make them a little bit more powerful. I know they got Jake Berger from the White Sox. They got Josh Bell to play at first base some, give him a little bit more power. I think Braves fans can be thrilled that neither Gene Segura or Garrett Cooper play for the Marlins anymore, because those guys always seem to wear out the Braves. But that aside, I do feel like the Phillies, they could play better down the stretch. I think they still have the horses in the rotation to get them into a wild card position, and we saw what happened last October. If you let that team get hot, they ran it all the way into the World Series, and that was a lot like what the Braves did the year before.
Grant, they acquired starting pitcher Michael Lorenzen from the Tigers, and so they're trying to boost their starting pitching. They added a first baseman. I just think they feel like, hey, we're not out of this thing.
No, they're not out of it at all, and they're definitely in the wild card. I don't necessarily see, as we get into the final couple of months, the amount of losing, number one, that the Braves would have to do, and couple that with the amount of winning that the Phillies would have to do to flip the division race seems unlikely and feels unlikely just based on where the Braves are. And even at, 8-9 since the All-Star break, this is a Braves team that can get hot, that can win 9 out of 10 or reel off another 7 or 8 game winning streak. And all of a sudden, as the Phillies are right now playing a team like the Marlins, say those two teams split that series, well, they've just done damage to one another in the division race, because you're basically just pulling days off the calendar. And I think that kind of puts the Braves in the driver's seat. But if you are the Phillies, I mean, they had some needs. So adding Lorenzen, I think, definitely helps out. First base has been kind of a question mark with Rhys Hoskins out for the year, trying out Bryce Harper there. So anything they could do to make themselves a little bit better helps out, because they know that they're going to have to go right out of the regular season and directly into work in that 3-game series to do something like they did last year and really advance in October.
It's our man Grant McCauley, guys. The trade deadline has come and gone. A lot of guys, again, because of the expanded playoffs, everybody and their uncle making moves. Grant, because I was talking about this with the audience earlier, you just don't know what the ask is. Maybe maybe Jack Flaherty was in our crosshairs, but they wanted too much. What would you think would be considered untouchable? Would A.J. Smith-Shawver the potential there? Do they still feel that Vaughn Grissom is a guy they would never consider moving right now?
No, I would tell you that there is, in my time of covering the Braves, and this dates back to a couple of different regimes, the only prospect I have ever heard referred to as untouchable was Ronald Acuna Jr., and that was when Alex Anthopoulos basically came onto the job, and he did want to take some time to see what they had in the organization, but there was never a temptation to trade a player like that. The Braves have had some good prospects. They've had some nice players that have become key members of this team that have come up through the minor leagues, but I have never heard anyone other than Acuna mentioned with the untouchable tag on him. And you can see for good reason why the Braves would not want to trade Ronald Acuna Jr.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're talking with Grant McAuley, guys. He is our Braves insider, covers the Braves today, the trade deadline, as we get ready to approach the month of August into September. You guys know it's a stretch run. This is when you start to either make your move or you extend a lead like the Braves have. Let's talk about tonight's matchup. Again, it's Strider tonight. Last night, I thought Charlie Morton pitched well enough to win. The offense just wasn't there, Grant.
Yeah, that was really what it was. I mean, for Charlie, it was a quality start. I mean, the 3 solo home runs, that's not necessarily something that makes you feel all great about it. But as we've said before, I mean, you can live with them when they're just a couple of solo shots. But the offense, outside of the Matt Olson home run, not really able to do anything. I don't know if that's kind of planning for Griffin Cannon and then getting Chase Solseth instead, and things just looked a little bit different. But be that as it may, I mean, this is an Angels club that has also been busy around the trade deadline. They were busy acquiring players here. They've made a few other trades. They could get Mike Trout back in the next couple of weeks. There's some things that are trending pretty well for them. But tonight, if you can get Spencer Strider on the mound, get him going, and, get the Braves offense going, Atlanta still has a chance to take 2 out of 3 in this series. They're not going to have to deal with Shohei Ohtani on the mound, so that's certainly a plus. But as we saw last night, he's a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He can work his walks. He can, I don't want to be hit by a pitch, but he was. And he's also a pretty darn good hitter, even with ones that don't go over the wall, though he almost had one out of the park if it weren't for Michael Harris. So I think it was just kind of a game where the Braves offense wasn't able to answer and do the things it did over the weekend. But, they're not going to score 9 tonight, no matter how good they get going at some time.
I got a kick out of Snickers saying, yeah, I'd be upset too if I was walking Ohtani,
Yep.
but it's just good baseball sense. They walked Olsen to get to Travis d'Arnaud, and it worked for them. It's part of baseball.
Yeah, it really is, and you got to understand the strategy that goes with it. And then I thought it was just one of those things that with Ohtani, I mean, it's the ultimate sign of respect, right? That you don't want to deal with a hitter like that if you don't have to in a close game. And I feel like that was kind of the flip side of the coin. Look how much respect Matt Olson's getting now. We've known he could take his walks, but there haven't been too many times this year that we've seen anybody want to face other hitters in the Braves lineup because this is a lineup that's tough to get out, but they did set it up to get out of that inning, and they were able to.
All right, Grant. Any surprises with the trade deadline as we wrap this up that happened today that you maybe didn't think a team would pull the trigger on something, or everything kind of laid out as you expected?
Well, it was pretty crazy to see that the Mets fully decided to start selling off pieces, and the pieces that they sold in advance of the deadline were Scherzer and Verlander. I mean, those are two big money pieces, and they paid a lot of money to the Astros, $54 million. If Verlander picks up that player option and stays in Houston the extra year, that's a pretty penny. So that was one that kind of took me not by surprise, but not a lot of clubs are doing that. So the Astros managed to quote unquote re-sign Justin Verlander. He just had to go spend 3 months in New York to get back there and continue his pursuit of 300 wins. But I thought the Royals not moving some of their relievers was a little bit surprising. Dylan Cease was getting a lot of traction from the White Sox. He didn't go anywhere, and the same thing for Bednar in Pittsburgh, the great all-star closer they have. He didn't go anywhere either. So that, to me, was a little bit surprising on those fronts.
By the way, Steve Cohen apparently flying to Kansas City to explain to his team why they fired Selden. Apparently Alonso's unhappy now, too, for what it's worth, Grant. And the information leaking that Billy Epler told Scherzer, we're really not going to be competing anytime soon. That's incredible and unfortunate, and, that just kind of lets you know how things were trending there in the frustration level, because typically, and I mean, I know everybody has the opportunity to use their platform to say how they feel and what they've heard, but Max Scherzer opening up that can of worms on his old teammates, that's a rough one, but it's more pointed at the organization, obviously, because we all know what the expectations were 3 months ago. Heck, maybe even less than that, maybe even 9 or 10 weeks ago, before everything just went sideways for them. Now you could be looking at not a rebuild, but at the very least a reset for that club. And, it just goes to show you that even when you dig down deep and have the biggest payroll in baseball, it does not guarantee you anything. Not that anybody should stop spending, but it just goes to show it's harder to put together the kind of club that, say, the Braves have than going out there and just buying a lot of pieces and trying to throw everything together in one off season.
Yeah, it can't happen, man. You got to develop. You got to draft. You've got to have guys in your system. We'll see where they go. I hope they choke forever. But bottom line is they are in this place because of ownership and their decisions. Grant, great job, man. We'll see what happens with the Braves tonight. We'll talk tomorrow and see if we walk Shohei again tonight.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.